Hello and welcome. It is Two Shoe Sports here for another fantasy football draft. We are here to walk you guys through a few scenarios, hopefully before you encounter your major drafts of the season, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at certain spots. I'm here with the man, Robbie Miller.
Yeah, what's up, guys? We are very excited. Two Shoe Sports back once again. We're going to be doing a live draft here, so just follow along with us.
Yep. Once again, we're gonna remind you, follow us on Twitter at Two Shoe Sports. Check us out on whatever platforms you're on. There too, Two Shoe Sports. So let's hop right into it. Well, and it looks like we don't want that information.
We're going to pull up our draft real quick here. We got signed up for one. Looks like we're about to load up. David, we got a couple thoughts here about picks. Do you like to be higher in the draft? Do you like to be mid-range in the draft? What do you think is the best?
We've done, like you mentioned, we've kind of done them all, and I kind of prefer being in the middle of the pack. Maybe that number 4 and number 5 pick, it ensures for us we get one of those top running backs. And, I like that. Being number 1, you got to wait. There's long droughts in between picks. Same if you're towards the end of the pack. Plus, I feel like you may lose out on a premier player. And as preseason's going along, we're seeing some of these guys like Michael Thomas backing out of it, things like that. I just think you've got a few surefire things at the top of the draft that it's hard to replicate.
Yeah, I agree completely with you there.
So we're going to go back. Fantasy football, check and see, enter in the live draft.
About to find out what pick we are. This is exciting. Just to let y'all know, we have come up with our own draft guide with our own Two Shoe Sports rankings that we're going to be going by here. Kind of guiding us along with these picks. Oh, looks like maybe there was an error loading the league, but that's okay. We can just retry. Usually these things, they just load back up. Still got an error. Well, that's all right. You know what? We can just create another one here.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to keep us out of that one, we'll hop into another one.
Yeah, if you guys got any general draft questions, I see a couple of us joining us. Just throw those out. We're definitely glad to have you. We're Two Shoe Sports went at it hard last year. We're coming back this year even harder. Waiting for this draft to load out, but
yeah, once again, guys, we're going to be referencing our fantasy guide a lot. It is something we're going to make available to the public for free here as soon as we tighten it up. I think it's going to change the way you draft. We're trying to make things a lot easier. Really identify the type of players and really the type of structure you need on your team to be able to win a championship.
Yeah, the draft guide that we've got laid out, it's kind of a one-stop shop. We give you the tiers of guys, some strategies as far as how to build your roster, as you mentioned, and really what picks you need to be looking at for your roster. So it looks like we are number 7 in this draft. 7's not too bad. It's near the middle. May miss out on one of those elite top tier running backs, but you're sure to get one of your favorite receivers.
Yeah, 7's a good pick. I don't think we've done a video on 7 yet, although we've done a few drafts at 7 just to help out with our draft guide. As Robbie mentioned, right here, the top tier running backs are going to be gone. So usually around 7, 8, you're looking at, a tough decision. Do you go with somebody like maybe Melvin Gordon's falling there, but there's a lot of questions around him, or do you just go ahead and snag one of the beast wide receivers that we have available in fantasy? And off the bat, although I haven't seen how the first 6 picks have shaken out, I imagine I'm probably going to be looking at one of those top wide receivers with pick 7.
Yeah, and I think that is the way it's going to shake out. Like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if Gordon would fall to us here. But at this point, we saw what Bell did, and we saw how detrimental it can be, to spend an early round pick on someone like that. So, I think we go receiver all the way. We have some very, very high receivers. We have 4 in our tier 1 of guys.
As you can see here, Yahoo brought up their kind of pre-draft rankings. Not too far off from what we have, but we do vary a good bit away from what you'll see on Yahoo, what you'll see on ESPN, really what you'll see from a lot of these guys. Too many people have a reputation. They hate to stray away from, the mainstream and fear of being called out. We just like to call it like we see it. So we're going to see a few guys that we talk about who are much higher than these Yahoo lists. But at the same time, you got to go with your gut. When we go by stats, look at the footage, look at the numbers, look at the positional rankings, look at the team, the opportunity. And by the time you calculate all these things in together, don't question yourself if you go into a draft with a solid list that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And ours, I'm very excited about what we've got here. It's very easy to read and easy to pick up for me as well and follow. Well, since we are going to be looking at these wide receivers, we believe we're going to maybe. They have Hopkins at 5. It's a possibility that one of our top running backs might be available, David Johnson, if we have a few reaches at receiver before us. So that's something to definitely consider or look out for.
Yeah, if David Johnson's available, he's a guy we've talked about before. We love him. We think that he has the potential to bounce back to that old form where we saw him as, a top 3 fantasy running back. He's going to have the opportunity there in Arizona. There's no one to take the carries away from him. They're going to have a revamped kind of offense. I look for him to catch, a lot of balls out of the backfield. And I look for David Johnson to have a great PPR year. So if he's available, I think this is where we go.
Yeah, if Johnson is definitely available at 7, I think that's a no-brainer. His usage alone will get him there. Plus, they added, Kingsbury's offense, Kyler Murray, so they should be much more potent this year than last year. So, yeah, Johnson really, I think, being undervalued in general this season from what I've seen. But, yeah, I think that's awesome. But if he's not there, go ahead, David.
So we've seen Melvin Gordon fall a little bit in the rankings. With his holdout, it's not surprising. He was already a little questionable last year. We saw they have a backfield there with Eckler and Justin Jackson, who are kind of capable of getting the job done, even if it's by committee. And then we saw Phillip Rivers this last week when asked about the holdout. He mentioned how, they already have a lot of great guys there, so they just got to keep moving forward. So it seems like the Chargers have their mind made up that if Gordon wants to be stubborn and hold out, they're going to let him do that because they feel confident in those guys that they have. So Gordon's slipping down the board, and that's not surprising. Even though initially he was as high as number 6 on our draft rankings, I don't know if he's someone I trust in the first round, when the first round's all about the foundation of your team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. To me, until this, contract situation gets sorted out, he's not a first rounder. I don't think he's a second rounder for me. If he is there in the 3rd round, drops for whatever reason that far, he's probably worth a gamble, but we're definitely not going to be checking him out here.
Even in the 2nd round, I think, he might be worth a peek. We've seen the value he can give to your team when he's healthy. This has nothing to do with his talent or even the team, just more so of the opportunity, that timeshare he's going to get if he does miss any time or happens to miss all of training camp. But even if Melvin Gordon gets back to going, week 2, 3, 4, he's a stud. So, like you said, not first round, maybe towards the end of the 2nd round, 3rd round, but it's tough. You're going to see him really high on a lot of your rankings, so you just got to ask yourself, how confident are you in your abilities to draft guaranteed players, in that round 5, 6, 7? Because if you think you've got a good eye, or if you're willing to stick to our draft guide, maybe he's worth the gamble. But for us, we're not sure about that. At pick number 7, if Melvin Gordon's that last running back there, I don't think we take him. We see Nick Chubb below him. I don't think he's that pick 7, type material as well, along with Le'Veon Bell. So it's tough. I think we'll be looking at one of these wide receivers unless McCaffrey can fall to us.
Yeah, McCaffrey or Johnson are definitely the number 1 targets. After that, it's going to be these wide receivers. We got 2 minutes now. We just hit the 2-minute mark until the draft gets underway. David, let's take a look at the 11 through 20 rankings here, and I want you to give me a player that you think has the best chance to finish, top 10 at his position. Or overall, excuse me.
Yeah, so when it comes to top 10 overall, we've seen the value of wide receivers and running backs kind of even out over the years. The league's becoming much more pass heavy, some of these wide receivers and tight ends are bringing tremendous value. You know, we've never seen 3 tight ends, you know, around the top 22 before. You know, Gronk and Hernandez, you know, had their heyday and things like that, but some of these tight ends are surprising. So while I don't think they will finish quite top 10 overall in points, that value they can bring can be a top 10 value. When you're playing other guys with a tight end 5, their tight end puts up 10 points and yours puts up, you know, 30 points. That's going to be a big difference. But if I had to pick one guy off of this list, I think I'd go with Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid pick there. And I just wanted to clarify real quick, when we talk about top 10 overall, that's quarterbacks excluded. They're usually putting up, you know, in the 300s. So I want to, you know, take those elite guys out and mainly just talk about the position players here. But yeah, Joe Mixon is an absolute stud. We actually have him a little bit higher than his ADP right now. So that's definitely just a stud there in that backfield.
Yeah, he's going to have the opportunities. You know, he's going to be hopefully in a better offense than last year. AJ Green's going to be healthy. Things can't get much worse there in Cincinnati. You know, we saw him put up a healthy chunk of running yards. We saw he's capable of catching the ball. You know, last year we were debating him or Giovanni Bernard. I think he's put all that to bed. Mixon's the better talent. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be the man there in Cincinnati. And the draft is starting. With pick 1 here, I'd have to assume it's one of these running backs. But you never know. We've seen some crazy things, especially as people are doing these first drafts. You're going to see a few things probably a little different. People are trying different strategies, maybe taking some different players. Most serious drafts aren't taking place here in the beginning of August. You're going to see those around the middle of August, you know, late August, depending on your league.
Yeah, we want to welcome you guys just joining us. We're just going through some live draft analysis and strategies as they pop up here. We got the number 7 pick overall. David Johnson was a target we mentioned coming in. If he falls off the board, according to our rankings, we're going to have to go with, it looks like Julio Jones is our next highest.
Yep, so we saw, as we predicted, those top 4 running backs go off the board. And here we are. Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, 2 of the most surefire wide receivers you can get. But there's David Johnson with our 7th pick. We mentioned that's who we wanted coming into it, so that's who we have to take.
Yeah, David Johnson, our 5th overall that we have rated. I think that's a no-brainer. We got him at 2 spots, you know, below value, so I think that's good for us.
Definitely. David Johnson, we talked about him a little bit before the draft, but seeing Chubb go right after us. We were talking about it. It's tough there at 8 or 9. You know, you see all these great running backs going off the board. Maybe you scroll down to your 3rd or 4th pick and you're looking at names, you know, like Aaron Jones and Kerryon Johnson, and you're like, man, Nick Chubb looks pretty attractive, regardless of the Kareem Hunt, you know, hype coming back, anything else going on. That Cleveland offense we were talking about earlier is primed to kind of be like that Kansas City offense last year, as far as just, you know, the young talent, young energy, and the opportunity they're going to have there. So although we like Chubb, that 8 is a little bit of a stretch. We saw Bell go at 9, so we're seeing those running backs fly off the board. Melvin Gordon's being left in the dust. Julio Jones went. So to us, that's kind of the majority of the top-tier players available in this draft. Michael Thomas is a top-tier talent guy we have up there, but once again, with this holdout, it's tough. We haven't quite adjusted our rankings, our final rankings yet. We're going to see how preseason camp goes, but I think that with Gordon and Thomas, you're seeing, you know, those worries directly reflected in this draft. You know, we're past their supposed value, but here they are.
Absolutely. So just going off our rankings right now, for our pick coming up, we would have Joe Mixon as our top-rated running back if we wanted to just knock our starting running backs out of the way. After that, Juju Smith-Schuster would be our highest rated wide receiver here. So it's really a question of philosophy.
Yeah,
do you want to lock down the running backs or snag one of each?
Yeah, it's our turn. As you can tell, you see Kelsey here. 14's a little bit of a stretch for us with Michael Kelsey. As you see Gordon there, and that's just, man, you'd love to just know he's going to be playing, because with the 14th overall pick, that'd be a steal. I don't know. I think it's the question, you know, do you want to double up on running backs? Do you want to go with a wide receiver? I kind of like the opportunity Mixon's going to get. And earlier, like we mentioned, we talked about him, being a potential top 10 player overall. I think that we go with another running back here.
Yeah, I think so too. The opportunity to have two of your starting running backs for our team in our top two tiers of running backs, I think that's too hard to pass up in this situation. Wide receivers, it's an air league. They're going to be around. I believe the fall off at running back deeper in the later to mid rounds is just greater. So I love that pick of locking up our second running back.
If Michael Thomas wasn't holding out, we probably would have taken him with that
Agreed.
pick. He probably wouldn't have been available to pick, but if he was, we would have taken him. We saw Kelsey just go off the board at 17, and that's more around the the realm of reality for where we believe he's at. We've got him still ranked a little bit lower than that, I believe, but still Kelsey is gonna provide that value for you. He's a WR1 in a tight end disguise.
Yeah, certainly, and definitely somebody who was, you would definitely look at around the 2022 range. 17, if you like Kelsey or you're a Chiefs fan, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We would probably just wait just a little bit, especially with names like Smith-Schuster on the board and Dalvin Cook, Damian Williams-Hill, some of these guys.
George Kittle and Ertz are other tight ends on the board. Before our next pick, they probably won't be there, but even if they are, Kelsey's the only guy I really believe in a whole lot. And so as we see some of these running backs go off the board, we feel confident with the duo we have in our backfield. We're probably going to start looking for some of these tier 2, 3 wide receivers to fill out our roster and make sure that we're going to be well rounded.
Yeah, and absolutely. And looking at the board here, we currently have 4 of our tier 2 receivers left. So if we can nab one of those guys, I think that's an absolute win for us here. And when we mention tier 1, tier 2, this isn't necessarily speaking about wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, but more so, we have only a 4-person tier 1, for example. So there's really kind of an elite to semi-elite break-off that we like to try to capture.
If Ertz and Brown are gone, Evans is a guy we really like. He's shown us what he can do in the past, and we think this year with Jameis, that Tampa Bay offense is going to be hurling it down the field. So Evans is probably going to be who we go with if things shake out.
100%. With just one pick left, yeah, I would say it's going to be, according to our rankings at least, to get one of these tier 2 guys, it's going to be Evans or Antonio Brown. We do like Evans, both of us, a little bit more with his stability. Antonio Brown, obviously a great wide receiver, but he's just got a new team, so there's a bit of a question. But yeah, I think we go Evans here. I like that pick.
Last year, Evans putting up 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's just a fantasy beast. Those are Julio Jones-esque, tier numbers, but he doesn't get the recognition. A lot of it's because of that inconsistency there in Tampa. It seems like they're always changing coaches, having to have a backup quarterback. They can't figure out who their running back is, and all of this make Mike Evans fall in the draft when he's been a stud for the past 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Really like Jameis to kind of be, he's currently going outside the top 10. I like his shot to finish inside the top 10 this year as well. So we've got the receiver, we've got the 2 starting running backs running with the flex spot before, we also have a receiver spot available. Looking at the names on the board and our overall rankings, it looks like Diggs is going to be our top overall. He may fall to us here, so that'll be interesting. Cooper and Thielen are right behind him. It looks like Thielen is gone, so Cooper or Diggs, I believe, are our picks here. If we wanted to look at running back, Marlon Mack would be at the top of our board, followed by Aaron Jones and Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman and Aaron Jones are guys who you really want to like. They're going to be in good offenses with Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers. They're going to be putting up some points, but for some reason you just can't trust them. Aaron Jones did show promise last year when he got an opportunity, and Devontae Freeman was good back before he got injured, but still these guys aren't the guys you're too excited about in the draft. When you still see some number 1 wide receivers like Amari Cooper, AJ Green, Stephon Diggs, even though you can argue Thielen's number one, he gives you number one type numbers. It's hard to pass on one of these guys for one of these running backs who've had all the the chances in the world, but haven't been a top 10 tier player before.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. Just one pick now remaining before our next pick. It looks like Diggs, like I said, is at the top, but T.Y. Hilton's still available. So T.Y. Hilton would be actually the guy that we would take just outside of our top 10 receivers here.
We like T.Y. Andrew Luck is a guy we really like this year. We have him as a very highly rated quarterback on our board, a little bit higher than some of these other guys, but just a little bit. Number 2. With the potential to be number 1. Mahomes is going to have a little bit of regression, but you're just trying to go against the grain if you're going to say Mahomes isn't going to be number 1. Not much has changed there in Kansas City. You can argue he has, I think, the worst strength of schedule for a quarterback this year, but Andy Reid's going to figure out a way for them to score points, and we're not scared, about it. They've got Tyreek Hill, still got Kelsey, got Watkins, got Damian Williams. They're going to be equipped to put up 40, and Mahomes, while he may not do 50 plus, he's going to do 40 plus with a whole lot of yards.
Yeah, and if you look at the draft here, it looks like Luck, a trio of Colts all going back to back to back, 34, 35, 36, but Luck actually going fairly high, even higher than we have him at the 36 overall. So I think that's very interesting there. Did we see Mahomes go off? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
He's there somewhere, lost in the mix. But yeah, somebody like Luck, almost, as much as we did. Maybe he's looking at our draft guide. You never know.
As we look at the board, we see running back Robert Woods, Godwin, Edelman, Galladay, Cooks. You see a lot of these, wide receivers who are going to get plenty of opportunity. Some number 1, some number 2s, but once again, now's the time. You don't need to reach for a quarterback. While we raved about how much we're going to like Luck this year, we wouldn't consider him until way into the 40s, 50s. Something like that. And even with some of the guys going later in the draft, like Ben Roethlisberger, you can get Big Ben in the 11th, 12th round of the draft, and he was a number 3 fantasy quarterback last year. Sure, they lost AB, but Pittsburgh's a system where you plug in a guy and they're going to give you fantasy numbers. If you think Big Ben's going to throw for less than 4,000 yards and 25 touchdowns, you're crazy. He's going to give you solid top 10 QB numbers. So don't take Luck in the 4th round. Don't take Mahomes in the 2nd round. Wait a little while. Get you a good guy. Big Ben, Phillip Rivers on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always about just evaluating the value at your current pick. And like you said, there's very few situations where I would feel comfortable taking either of those quarterbacks as high as you mentioned. So we got 5 picks now until we are back up. We have our starting running backs and starting receivers filled. Yet to have a tight end, quarterback, and we still have that flex option available. So pretty much wide open on who we're going to be looking at here.
Yeah, once you have, if pick number 5, if you have the 2 RBs, the 2 wide receivers, you don't really need anything. So we're just going to evaluate who the best player is on our board as we get here. What about Deshaun Watson? If he's there with this next pick, is that somebody we consider? Or, we just got done talking about how, you don't reach for a quarterback around here. So, to me, I don't think it's, necessarily somebody we target. But what do our rankings say?
Yeah, our rankings have him still fairly a little bit lower here. We do have him at 52 overall, so he's at 47. It might be a little too early to take him, and there's still some players that we've got rated ahead of him available. Brandon Cooks is actually our top rated player according to our rankings. Edelman is gone, Woods is gone, so yeah, we would have Brandon Cooks, then Kenny Galladay, who is gone as well. So it seems pretty obvious to me. Brandon Cooks, in the Rams last year, they do have Robert Woods as well, but they've shown that they can both put up plenty of good fantasy numbers. We're also throwing Cooks in the flex there, so depending on how the draft shakes out, we could solidify that and back that up pretty well. Looks like we're coming around again.
We see Kupp off the board, Lindsey off the board, Josh Jacobs there, which we've seen him slipping a little bit in rankings. A lot of the hype, there's a lot of hype on him. We saw him creep even into the, I saw him taken there in the 30s even in some drafts. But I think reality's setting in, and people are like, oh, yeah, well, it's still Oakland. So Josh Jacobs falling back down to kind of where he's going to belong. Tyler Boyd off the board, Kerryon Johnson, and it's our pick.
See, Kerryon Johnson, we actually have as the highest rated running back. Well, no, James White's still out there, but Kerryon Johnson was an interesting pick. But at the current board, the way we have it, Tyler Lockett is the highest rated player we have.
I also see O.J. Howard down here.
Yeah, he's just 2 picks right behind Lockett, so definitely, you know, he's a player. If you have the 2 running backs and you've got the 2 receivers, are all your receivers filled? Tight end is definitely a place I would look. So yeah, I think Lockett or Howard here. It's really...
Yeah, we can go Lockett. He's the highest on our list, so we'll take him.
Howard may fall to us in the next round. Hopefully that would be awesome. As we mentioned, Howard is just 2 picks behind Lockett in our rankings here, so that would be nice if he fell.
Yeah, we've got... Somebody finally took Josh Jacobs. We see Robinson, Ridley, Williams. The top of our board. Ridley putting up 10 touchdowns last year was surprising. A lot of people think that was a byproduct of, you know, coverage focus on Julio Jones. Is he going to be able to step out and do it again? A lot of times it takes wide receivers 2-3 years to catch up to the game, you know, and learn how to run those routes, read those corners, and really be able to make an impact. But we saw Ridley as a rookie come out of the box and, you know, blow up huge for fantasy guys.
And something interesting here, Njoku just going off the board. Someone, I think consensus would be a little bit under at least Evan Ingram and possibly O.J. Howard. So I think that's kind of interesting with those 2 names on the board. Evan Ingram's got a real interesting situation here with, you know, Golden Tate's now suspended 4 games. Sterling Shepard has a broken finger. Corey Coleman with the ACL gone for the year. Who's going to get any of these targets?
It looks like, yeah, Saquon and Ingram are going to be the only 2 guys left there in New York to catch balls. We know they both can do it, but New York's in a little bit of trouble. They got rid of OBJ and seemed to act like they didn't really care, but they're going to be missing him this year. I think Eli's numbers are going to plummet. Even though he said quarterback's kind of deep, he's somebody you shouldn't even take in a 40-round league or 40-team league in the 50th round. You know, you got better luck with just about anybody else.
Yeah, Dwayne Haskins or anybody. Pick a name out of a hat. So O.J. Howard is still here. He is, I believe, tops of our board. If we were looking at tight end, running backs wise, I believe James White's still available. We have him fairly high if we wanted to look at a running back. And as far as receivers go, yeah, we have Calvin Ridley, I believe DJ Moore.
I think we take O.J. Howard. Right now we're just filling out our bench. He's our top of the tier 2 tight ends that we think can really have a big impact on your team. Even with the news of Tate and everyone else, we like O.J. Howard's potential and what he can do there in Tampa Bay. So I think that he's at the top of our list. That's who we take.
Yeah, absolutely. O.J. Howard is definitely the pick here. Well done. I'm really excited for him. We mentioned Jameis earlier. And, you know, the beneficiary of his big season is going to be Mike Evans, who we took, and now O.J. Howard. So talented, big target, just a lot to like down there in Tampa. 4 more picks here.
James White off the board, a running back we really like. Hunter Henry, a guy who was supposed to take the reins from Antonio Gates, but because of injury hasn't been able to do so. A lot of people like him this year. He is, you know, in one of our top tight end tiers, but at the same time, we haven't drafted him in many drafts just because of the unknowns. Sure, he has that potential, but we rather have a guy we've seen do it before, you know, have potential rather than an unknown guy and just assume he's going to do what Antonio Gates was able to do.
So we are 3 picks now away from our next pick. If we're looking at our rankings here, we've got Calvin Ridley. Pretty much the top 4 are our highest rated receivers, almost in order. We have Anderson over Jeffrey. And if we want to talk quarterbacks, with James White's departure, I believe Penny is the highest on our board, followed by Carson. So if we're looking at value at the position, I think we're looking at one of these receivers. Maybe worth taking a peek at the quarterback situation. Okay, I see Newton down there. Let's look at Newton in our overall. So no, Newton's not worth reaching for as far as we're concerned. Ridley is at the top of the board. I know we have a lot of receivers already. David, what are your thoughts on this pick? Where do we go?
I think Calvin Ridley's at the top of our board, and since we have that flex spot that allows us to play a wide receiver, I think we take Ridley as we're still trying to acquire the best talent out there. And I think that
Agreed.
He's shown he can do it. Mike Williams is a guy we really like. They got rid of Tyrell Williams. He's going to get a lot of targets this year. But we like Ridley, who's emerging as that number 2 go-to guy in Atlanta.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even with a very kind of mediocre to low target share last year amongst his other wide receivers, still, as we mentioned earlier, putting up the double-digit touchdowns. So he's a great athlete on a big offense there. So a good pick there, I would say, in the late to mid 8th round. So if we take a look at the running backs real quick, because we have filled out, we've got our tight end, we've got our wide receivers for the most part. We maybe want to start targeting a couple of these who we call the tier 5 running backs right before we get to our backups list. And I do see a couple names out there, so Penny and Latavius Murray, maybe guys to just keep in mind. Tevin Coleman out there as well. So you just kind of want to look ahead and be ready for some, just be ready for the future there. So we can take it back to the overall rankings.
You see Mike Williams still on the board. Not really sure why. They have him at 52. We're at the 79th pick as of now. I'm pretty sure we've got Mike Williams higher than that on our draft rankings. We see Alshon, Robbie Anderson, Sammy Watkins, some of these wide receivers. Alshon, not really sure what he's going to do there in Philadelphia this year. Can Wentz stay healthy? They don't have the backup in Foles that they have had, that kind of security blanket. And they have a few more targets to consider in Philadelphia this year with the emergence of Goddard, D-Jack's coming back in town. So we'll see, but I'm not the biggest Alshon fan this year. I like Mike Williams and Robbie Anderson's upside over him.
Yeah, I agree. Jeffrey can't. He's got all the talent to be elite, but he's just often injured, and Anderson should be the one. Williams, as you mentioned, has got Allen opposite him to get double coverage, and they really like him. He put up a big year. So, yeah, out of those guys, I definitely like Jeffrey the least. But it looks like these receivers are available for us. To me, at this point, it's almost a question of, are these running backs that we like going to be there later? Obviously, the value, I believe, is Mike Williams. I think there's undoubtedly value in Mike Williams right here. The only question is, do you possibly look ahead on a running back you miss out? For me, at this point, I don't necessarily think so. I think it's worth a gamble. It may pay off, it may not. But talent is talent. He's at the top of our board. I think that's the right call.
Yeah, Mike Williams is the guy to snag right here. We're building a lot of wide receiver depth, but as we look down the list, there's still a bunch of running backs that we like. We see Penny. We see Latavius Murray down here. Still a few faces that we feel confident in being able to, fill in for a bye week, maybe a week or two if there's an injury. And so right now, Mike Williams is just the better talent on the board.
Yeah, just the overall best value there. And with running backs, you obviously want to have the good ones, but if you play the waiver wire correctly, which, Two Shoe Sports, we pride ourselves on our waiver wire and being able to read it. If you play the waiver wire correctly, on any given week, you could get an injury and all of a sudden you have an Austin Eckler who's a, RB2 instantly, or a Justin Jackson there, even with a holdout. So I think they're a little more fickle to read at the running back spot than the receivers, so take the value when you can get it, and we like Mike Williams a lot, so that was a no-brainer. I might be looking at Penny on this next pick. just because I'm not so sure I want to go with that long strand before we get a receiver. What are you kind of thinking there?
If Penny's available, I think that we should take him. A running back at this point, even if we're taking him a few picks above our projection, is okay because we need that depth, and we've already filled the team with kind of the top tier talent that was available. So at this point, we've got most of our starters. We just need to build depth in a few spots. So Penny's there. I think we take him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good pick, and we actually like Penny to push Carson to be that fantasy monster that everybody can depend on in the backfield. We do have Carson right around Penny in our rankings, but Penny's going to be the more athletic. He passes the eye test. I watched him a few games last year. I'm sure you caught some, and I just think he looks like the better back, and wouldn't be surprised to see him have the bigger fantasy impact down the stretch.
Quarterback still on the board: Cam Newton, Kyler Murray, Jameis, Dak, Ben. After Ben is when my list kind of stops. I don't want to start a quarterback, that we're looking at after Ben. I don't feel all that confident in Kyler, but with Cam, Jameis, Dak, these are all guys I can trust, and I feel okay starting, week 1 fantasy season. And if we end up waiting a little bit on a quarterback, we could end up drafting a backup, which normally we don't do, but it's worth doing if you end up waiting as late as we may to get a quarterback, just to ensure that you nab 2 of these guys. Although you look a little further down the list, Derek Carr's shown he can be a good quarterback. There with Antonio Brown, he's going to have a premier elite wide receiver. Matthew Stafford, when he's healthy, we've seen him put up 5,000 yards before. I know he's missing Calvin Johnson, but he's got Golladay, Jones, a few of those guys if they can stay healthy, Darnold. So there's even chances once the waiver wire comes into play as the season starts, you'll be looking at some of these quarterbacks down here. Not sure if Mariota will be one of those guys, but Foles is a big question mark. Dalton, if he can stay healthy with AJ Green back. So once again, we're not too worried that we missed out on the top tier quarterbacks because we're going to find the points down here.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. There are at least, I would say, 4 quarterbacks on that list that we just had that I would feel comfortable starting. So yeah, if you see the value, you take it. That's pretty much, I think, what we're trying to say here. So with 2 bench spots remaining and the quarterback position, it's kind of interesting. This is where you see a lot of different scenarios play out through your head. Who can I get? Who can I wait on? Definitely some talented receivers that I know we both like. I guess the question is, do you take the value at receiver that we see, or do we still try to solidify? I think we have 3 running backs on our roster right now. Maybe we solidify that position.
Latavius Murray's the guy that I like here. If he's available with this next pick, I think that we take him. He's going to hopefully fill those Mark Ingram shoes and that fantasy role. He's a more athletic back than Mark Ingram was. He's a beast when it comes to goal line touches. So I think that Latavius Murray's a solid pick here to kind of finish our running back herd.
Agreed. And Latavius Murray is our highest rated running back available. And everything you said about his situation there in New Orleans, his goal line carries, everything, I think he's definitely going to perform above his position here. So I'm definitely on board with that pick. Hopefully he'll be available.
We see Cam go off the board. Christian Kirk, a guy we really like out of Arizona. Although at this point we don't really have our eyes on wide receivers just because of the depth we've established. Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton. We have O.J. Howard, who to us is like a WR2. Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams. Talent up and down the board, so we're not really checking out those wide receivers too much.
Yeah, even though, like you mentioned, we do see a lot of value in Kirk, even, Samuel, some of these guys, but yeah, Latavius Murray is definitely the way to go on our roster, the way we have assembled it. So we have 1 bench spot remaining. We do have 4, and once again, we've hit our 4 running back in the top 5 tiers mark. That's kind of our benchmark that we like. Definitely would feel most comfortable having 4 total running backs from those top 5 tiers and not having to pull from the what we consider the backups list. Bench spot quarterback.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a quarterback here. We see Jameis, Dak, Ben. They may not be available by the time that next pick would come. So at this point, I don't really consider it reaching. We really like Big Ben. If he's there, once again, Jameis, Dak, I think that we take one of these guys just to ensure that we're not left with Jimmy Garoppolo or Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And yes, Ben is at the top of that board. He's still a tier 3 quarterback for us, one of the last available. But I know there are a lot of those tier 4 guys for us that we like: Prescott, Winston, Rivers. So either way, I think we're gonna feel pretty good about this pick, whoever we decide to go with, whoever.
Kyler Murray's still there. Dede Westbrook, Darius Geis. Geis has a lot of talent. We don't think he has that ultimate upside. He's not much of a pass catching back. They'd love for him to be, but that wasn't really his role at LSU. That's not what he's been doing at Washington so far. Plus, they have Chris Thompson, and if Thompson's healthy, he's going to play that role, kind of the Tariq Cohen of the Bears. So with our pick here,
I just want to say real quick, before we take one of these quarterbacks, should we take a peek at defenses and see if there's one left that we really like? I would take our overall number 1 here. If they are not there, I would maybe wait. They are here. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll take the Chargers. Their defense, we're really high on this year. We've talked about in years before how it's pretty tough to predict a top tier defense. You know, the number 1 team rarely repeats, but last year we were telling you keep an eye out for the Bears. They're going to be the best defense. They ended up winning a lot of people championships, including us in 4 out of our 5 major leagues. And so we think that this year it's going to be the Chargers. Bosa's back. They've got Ingram, so that pass rush is tremendous. They've also got some studs there in the secondary with Casey Hayward. And the guys, they're going to cause some turnovers. That offense is going to be moving the ball, so they're going to keep that defense off the field. We really like the Chargers this year, even in a tough division with the Chiefs. Some people are like, oh, are you afraid of being lit up for 50 points twice a year? But we think that those games are going to be a lot closer than you think this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for us, that pick really came down to, I believe, availability at our next pick. And I think Roethlisberger and Prescott and those guys were more likely to be here on this pick than the Chargers were. So that's why we pulled that defense off the board, and they were our number 1 overall. So very excited about that to get them. 4 picks now. As I mentioned, Roethlisberger's that last of the tier 3 quarterbacks. He was QB3 overall last year. He has definitely been disrespected up and down this year. We know he lost Antonio Brown, but if you're a Smith-Schuster believer, then you could argue he didn't really lose him at all.
Big Ben off the board. So we're looking at Dak here.
I would lean Dak. Did Winston already go as well?
I'm pretty sure Jameis went off the board. Let's check it out.
Yeah. I would be afraid to stack Dak, or not Dak. I would be afraid to stack Winston with Evans and Howard and put too many of your eggs in one basket necessarily. If you're splitting hairs between these guys, I would lean Dak. Obviously, Winston's not available, so that choice is moot. But Dak is a guy we have in our tier. He's the last of our tier 4 quarterbacks available before we get into what we consider backups. So definitely happy with that pick. And the Cowboys they're going to have a monster offensive year, I believe. Cooper, just down the line. Witten's going to be a Pro Bowler. No, I'm just kidding.
That'd be nice. It's not 2010 anymore, but we can all hope. As we look at some of these next available guys, at this point in the draft, you shouldn't need any of these players. You should be looking for guys that can be home run picks. Maybe you heard something about a guy, or you love the fact Geronimo Allison's going to be the confirmed slot receiver for Aaron Rodgers, or different things like that. So with this pick, it's okay for your last bench spot just to reach for a guy. Maybe go for somebody you're not sure of, but you think has unlimited potential. Chances are 95% of all these players we're looking at here are going to end up on the waiver wire, being traded back and forth between most of the teams on your league. So go ahead and take that guy. If you scroll down a little bit and you're like, man, I really like Damian Harris. You know, Michelle has those knee issues. James White and Burkhead aren't really run between the tackle guys. Go ahead and take Damian Harris. It's okay with this last bench spot. Just take somebody that you like.
All that being said, David, who is that guy for you this year? And not this year, this is situation.
As I mentioned, there's a few players that jump out, even whether they fall in line with their rankings or not. Geronimo Allison, like I said, it was confirmed he's going to be this confirmed slot receiver for the Packers this year, which is going to be a huge thing. We saw what Randall Cobb was able to do before when he played with Aaron Rodgers in that system. Well, maybe a different system with a new head coach, but Aaron Rodgers is going to find his slot receiver. One of the more talented quarterbacks in the league. Geronimo Allison is a great athlete with good hands. I really like him. If you're looking at running backs, there's a few guys I like who are guaranteed to get kind of an opportunity a little more so, but as I mentioned, Damian Harris is a guy where, like the past 3 years, the person who we thought's going to be the guy in the New England backfield turned out not being the guy.
Yeah.
So it's never who you think it's going to be, although we've talked about how we do like James White and his pass-catching ability, but you know that when it comes to Belichick, he doesn't care about your fantasy team. He doesn't care about the name on the back of the jersey. Mm-hmm. He's just going to win the game.
He's going to let some guy named James Devlin go get 3 touchdowns in 1 week.
Exactly. And as the Patriots got older, we saw Tom Brady, even though they won, go look at his numbers. They weren't great. They're turning to those short yardage plays, trying to run the ball a little bit more. They drafted Damian Harris for a reason, so I think he's worth a pick here.
I agree. Maybe look at one of those receivers had we gone running back heavy, but the fact that we got so deep at receiver so quickly, Damian Harris is a home run for me here with your last pick. As you mentioned, he's got a high upside if he could just be used right. It's really there to see. Most likely playing the waiver wire with these guys, as you mentioned, but I really like that pick.
If you're in 12-team leagues and you're starting to look at guys down this list, few more names we really like. James Washington, a lot of hype around that guy in Pittsburgh this year, and for good reason. He's a good wide receiver, and obviously Juju's moving over to the AB slot. Somebody's going to be filling in for Juju, and if that's James Washington, we saw Juju become, a top 10 fantasy wide receiver last year, emerging as a borderline superstar, even with Antonio Brown still putting up WR1 numbers. And so James Washington is a guy who can, take some of that load off and give Big Ben another mouth to feed. So I really like him this year. Jordan Reed is a tight end. When he's healthy, he's so talented. Dwayne Haskins, that young quarterback, he's probably going to be looking for those dump passes as he adjusts to learning those NFL secondaries. So I think that if Jordan Reed can stay healthy, he's definitely a sleeper tight end as well, along with Herndon, who we saw do well with Darnold last year. They've got 1 year chemistry under their belt. Heading into this year, that division stinks. They're part of why it stinks, but we think that they can do some damage.
Yeah, I agree. So it's our turn here. We're going to take a kicker. The top of the list is a guy that we have been taking in a lot of our drafts. We're homers, so we like the Cowboys. And not to mention that we just like, we think he's going to be a quality kicker this year. Don't need to think too much about it. Just go with your gut.
Yeah, so once again, guys, thanks for joining us. Another fantasy draft, Two Shoe Sports. Follow us. If you'd like to end up with a great fantasy team, let us know. We will help you out. DM us, follow us, tag us with your questions. Be on the lookout for other videos. And thanks for joining us.
Go ahead and click subscribe right here, right now on this video, and